All right, good afternoon. The time is now 12 o'clock, and I'll call this regular meeting of the Coppers Cove Economic Development Corporation to order. Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Joey Faji.
If you would, please join me. Father, thank you for this opportunity to begin our own meeting, and we look for your guidance in making the right decisions for our community and our city. In your name and grace, we pray. Amen. Amen. Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Brittany, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Jay Jackson.
Here.
Joey Afaji.
Here.
Jonas Titus.
Here.
Adam Martin.
Here.
Jeremy Tate.
Here.
Diane Dressel.
And announcements.
Tuesday, May 7th, 2019, City Council approved Jay Jackson as one of the new EDC Board Directors. Saturday, May 25th, 2019, there's a golf tournament at 9 a.m. at the Hills of Golf Course. Saturday, June 8th, 2019, there'll be a run walk for the homeless at 7:45 at the Colleen Community Center. And Saturday, June 8th, 2019, there's a Chief Tim Mones golf tournament at 7 a.m. at the Hills of Golf Course.
Thank you. And Mr. Jackson, a very big welcome to the board. We're very glad to have you today.
Thank you very much. My honor to serve my city.
Awesome. All right, moving on to Citizens Forum. At this time, excuse me, did you have another? At this time, citizens will be allowed to speak on any matter other than personnel matters, matters under litigation, or matters on the regular agenda for a length of time not to exceed 5 minutes per person. 30 minutes total has been allotted for this section. Is there anyone wishing to speak at Citizens Forum today? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under this item are considered to be routine by the EDC Board of Directors and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Item F1, consideration and action on approval of minutes for the workshop meeting held on April 24th, 2019. And item F2, consideration and action on approval of minutes for the regular board meeting held on April 24th, 2019. What's the desire of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that on consent agenda item F1 and F2 that we approve both.
Motion for approval by Jeremy,
I'll second that.
second by Joey. Is there any additional discussion?
None for me.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Looks like there's no public hearing today. Moving on to action items. Item H1, consideration and action on authorizing the release of funds to the City of Coppers Cove for charges to the CCEDC for services rendered as agreed upon by various city employees for the month of April 2019. Velia Key, Director of Financial Services.
Thank you, sir. So for the total hours worked for the month of April 2019 are 9 hours and a half. That amounts to $441.31, and that is 5 hours and a half work for the finance staff and 4 hours for the IS department. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions?
None for me.
Not for me.
All right, what's the desire of the board?
Adam, if I can go ahead and make that motion to approve H1 as read.
All right, motion for approval by Joey,
Second that.
second by Jeremy. Is there any additional discussion on this item?
None.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Item H2, consideration and action on approving the unaudited financial report of the Coppers Cove Economic Development Corporation for the month of April 2019. Velia Key.
Thank you, sir. So the highlights for the month of April is that the comparison of the portfolio from April 30, 2018 to April 30, 2019, the portfolio has increased by $682,476. The total amount of the funds is allocated to 8.8% to the operating account and 91.2% to the tax pool account, making the total of over $6 million. The year-to-date revenues exceeded expenditures by $565,277. The total sales tax allocation received was in the amount of $104,489. The amount of interest earned during the month of April was in the amount of $11,298. There was a total of 39 disbursements, meaning 39 checks written during the month of April. All of those are considered routine, with the exception of one, check number 300 to Chloe R. Johnson, and that is for the executive search in the amount of $6,000. If we go into the actual last 3-4 pages of the financials, we see that the total amount of the expenditures for the month of April was in the amount of $32,825. If we compare that to where we are at year to date as of April 30th, the corporation has spent $253,570. We started the year with $5.7 million as a beginning fund balance, and we are ending with $6.2 million on the fund balance as of April 30th, 2019. Are there any questions that I might be able to answer?
Any questions?
No.
What's the desire of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the unaudited financial report for the month of April 2019.
Motion for approval by Jeremy,
I'll second that.
second by Joey. Is there any additional discussion on the item?
None for me.
None.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Item H3, consideration and action on a resolution accepting the quarterly investment report as presented for the quarter ending April 2019 per the investment policy. And I understand there's a correction that this would be the quarter ending March.
March 31st.
2019. Okay.
Thank you, sir. So the quarterly investment report ending March 31st, 2019 is doing comparison between where we were a year ago and where we are as of March 31st. On where we were a quarter, because this is December 31st, 2018.
Okay.
So on December 31st, 2018, we ended up with $5,755,786. A quarter later, as of March 31st, we are ending up with $5,967,529. The allocation of the portfolio changed a little. As of December 31st, the operating account was allocated to 4.9% in comparison to the operating account for March 31st to 7.7%. The same with tax pool. As of December 31st was 95.1%, where as of March 31st, the allocation was 92.3%. The difference between December 31st and March the 31st is that the portfolio increased by $211,743. And the next, of course, is the resolution. Are there any questions on the allocation of the funds?
Before I call for the motion, if you would include that this is for the investment report for the quarter ending March 31st in any motion. So what's the desire of the board?
Adam, I'll make that motion to approve the resolution accepting the quarterly investment report as presented for the quarter ending March 31, 2019, per the investment policy.
I think it's,
Okay, motion for approval by Joey and a second by Jay. Is there any additional discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, sir.
Item H4, discussion and direction on the participation in the regional DAG, which is Defense Economic Adjustment Assistance Grant, matching funds requirements. Looks like Keith Sled.
Good afternoon, gentlemen and ladies. Ryan called me last night because he said he was going to be out with the training today and asked if I could come in and talk about this a little bit, just to give you an update on it. Do I need to click on that for you? Oh, okay. I think the data's in your packet. So what I'll do is I'll explain to you what DAG is, because it's been a while since you probably have heard anything about it. And then there's no decisions or anything. It's just kind of information. And if you have questions, you please let me know as we go through this. So the state has a program called the Defense Economic Adjustment Assistance Grant Program. It's administered by the Texas Military Preparedness Commission. The last two bienniums, they have allocated funds, $30 million 4 years ago, $20 million 2 years ago. And unless something unusual happens in the legislature this session in the next 4 days, it should be $30 million for the next biennium as well. The program was originally designed to help communities and the areas around installations deal with impacts from base realignment and closure, force reductions, or other changes that affected the economic system in those areas. So the grants range from $500,000 to $5 million, $5 billion being the max that a state would grant under the program. And so far, there's $62 million that they've given, because those two allocations, and they found they call it a second allocation, but really it's just some of the money that was never spent was reallocated out for 52 grants over the life of the program. In this area, we have done 2 grants so far. One 4 years ago was for the renovation of the approach radar control facility over on Robert Gray Army Airfield and Fort Hood Regional Airport. And that facility provides radar coverage and air traffic control for 60 nautical miles around Fort Hood, including all the smaller communities around here, and then it's a backup to Austin-Bergstrom as well. The one that's going on right now, it was started in January of this past year of 18. It is a digital installation security system that will go around both the military side and the civilian side of the airfield over there. And so what it does is there's about a number of soldiers every day that are tasked to provide physical security at different points because there's no observation of those areas. It will relieve that ability. And so for Fort Hood, it gives 5,000 training days a year back to Fort Hood. So if you think about it, 5,000 soldiers on one day, or a squad or more on other days, will be able to stay at Fort Hood and do what they're supposed to be doing, because their normal duty isn't to do physical security. That system is on track. It should be completed around August. We're waiting to get the final date. And of course, the people that contributed to it, such as Coppers Cove and EDC, will be invited to that when it's undone. And it benefits both sides of the airfield because it improves security for the commercial side as well. So then the program for this biennium, the state will allocate the funds. I'll give you a schedule and it kind of lays it out. We carry projects over from year to year unless the project no longer is a viable project. So we met on 2 May initially with what's called my coordinating committee, which is the 7 city managers from Temple, Belton, Harker Heights, Killeen, Coppers Cove, Gatesville, and Lampasas, and then the 3 county judges for Lampasas, Bell, and Coryell County. And there were 3 topics we talked about. DAG was one of those. And we'll set up a DAG review board through them. And so either they or their representatives will meet as we move forward. What we will do is go through these projects. This is not a rank order. This is just a list of projects, with the newest ones being at the top and then the older ones being at the bottom. And you'll see some notes. If the notes are in red, that was the last note for that project from when we did the FY17 round of DAG. And you'll see some of those really aren't viable based on the cost. And I say it in this context. If you look at the second one from the bottom, which has the black bold print, it originally was a $12 million estimate. As I said, the state will give you 5. That means $7 million has got to come from either, you get a little bit from Fort Hood, but then the rest has to come from the local area. Well, that's not feasible given the economic circumstances of the communities around the area. Both the grants we've done in the past have been right around $5 million, 5.3 for one and then 4.8 for the other one. And actually, that one, I got an update 2 days ago. That one is now on the Chief of Staff of the Army's unfunded priority list, and it's one of 8 infrastructure projects he submitted to Congress. So it most likely will be funded with funding in this next session. So if you look at the ones closer to the top, you'll notice there are 3 for FY19. One of them is access road from State Highway 9 to Tank Destroyer Road, replace a low water crossing, and that one I suspect will fall down because it's going to be a higher cost than $5 million, you know, in the general. If you look at the other ones, that $12 million is from 17. You saw from 17 to 19, that one project jumped $6 million based on increases in construction cost and scope. The other project is Copper's Cove Land Exchange with Fort Hood. So that one's been on there. That one's only waiting on the requisite amount of land to be acquired by Copper's Cove to do the exchange with Fort Hood. And so once sufficient land's been acquired, we can go in and do a DAG project for that one as well. When we met the last time, we did not vote, or the board did not vote on these. Ideally on the 6th June meeting, which is our next meeting, they will kind of refine it further and pick at least the top 2 or 3 that will dig in deeper, or they may pick the top 1. That's kind of the board's decision when we meet. But what I'm specifically here to talk about is that top one, which is the access road to State Highway 9, because it ties into 2 things, for Fort Hood and then for the region as well. This is a snapshot out of the feasibility study for the multimodal facility to be potentially located on the west side of Fort Hood. What you'll notice, this is the current railhead right here. So this facility would go in this area right here. To have access to this facility, you have to make 2 improvements. You have to have a northbound access road that goes from State Highway 9 on to Tank Destroyer. You also have to have a southbound lane that would come from here, Tank Destroyer Road, Georgetown Road, but then get on to South Highway 9 to go south. Currently, you can only get off Highway 9, hit the loop, and get onto Fort Hood, or you can leave Tank Destroyer and go north. And so for trucking, you have to have that ability to go in. These improvements were required as part of the multimodal study. As part of that study, though, when we were going through that in that 6-month period, what we learned is, and as you kind of see the traffic and you watch what goes on, if you've been down I-14 in the morning at about 7:30 or 8, you'll notice that the Clark Road gate, where commercial trucks enter Fort Hood now, traffic backs up on the access road, and then it gets onto I-14 in a lot of cases. And when school's in session, you have commercial trucks loaded with everything from fuel to ammo, just to general supplies, buses, and then commercial trucks that come onto, or commercial vehicles such as me, if you work on Fort Hood, or somebody, dependent, someone else that wants to go into Fort Hood, all backed up in that little conga line, trying to get over to the gate to get on. What this would do is, this would allow Fort Hood to move the commercial truck access point to Tank Destroyer. And it works in a lot of different ways. One, it helps the future capability of the site for the multimodal. It reduces the overall cost of the multimodal site by $5 million. For Fort Hood, it allows them, once they move the truck access point over here, all the commercial truck traffic comes into here. Fort Hood, if this goes through, Fort Hood's going to put a commercial truck upload download point right up here. Because right now, if you load a vehicle on a truck, it goes over behind the new hospital, because that's where the current truck rail facilities are. So you have heavy trucks moving through the housing area and through the main posts that don't need to be there on any given day. Also for ammunition, when you come up Clark Road Gate, which is right over here, you have to go up to hit Tank Destroyer, where at that intersection you have housing and a school. So it minimizes the impact of any potential accidents in that area as well. And it puts all the industrial facilities, which are over in this part of Fort Hood, in the same kind of general location. You'll see that the study estimated about a total of $5 million. I met with TxDOT, I and Fort Hood met with TxDOT about 2 weeks ago. TxDOT has agreed to do the design for this, which is a cost saver. They also are going to do the NEPA Act, the Natural Environmental Protection Act, actions for it as well, which is another cost saver. I actually got a draft design from TxDOT Monday. Their cost came in at $5,015,000, and that includes a 15% contingency as part of that. So if it stayed on schedule, you didn't have to use contingency. It actually comes in at about 4.3. So their estimate and study and this are both in line. So depending on what the board goes, what we would anticipate, because the 2 top projects in viability and importance to Fort Hood, is the Coppers Cove Fort Hood land swap. And if that was available today, that would be the number one project in Fort Hood's eyes. Until that one becomes available, General Funk thinks this is number one. For Fort Hood, it gives them deployable capability because they can now easily get onto this road to hit I-14 and go out, or they can actually come off I-14 and go directly into the rail facility over here to upload or download, or the industrial facility over here. It will support safety and security because it moves all that traffic, or half that traffic, off of the Clark Road gate over to this part of the road. The entry control point for Fort Hood is right up here. So you have a long line that when this goes in, trucks can pull in and park off the side, waiting to go into the gate without having anything back up onto I-14 or onto State Highway 9 at that point. And then for Coppers Cove, it has that long-term potential. If this facility goes in, you know, there's economic development aspects of it that you can use as part of your business park. The initial part of the facility, the primary commodities, if you remember, that came out of that are going to be agricultural, non-petroleum mineral products, both going in and out. They estimate about 7,000 rail cars a year, 4,000 plus coming in, 3,000 plus going out. This in the near term it's a great project, and it will help the community. Where you really got to think about this, I think, is in the long-term aspects of this. I'm sure you're all familiar with what's called the Texas Triangle, so Dallas to San Antonio to Houston and then back to Dallas. It was a coin termed years ago. If you think about that in the state, and there's some interesting numbers, and these numbers are as of the last year. So in that triangle, 66% of Texans live, 18 million people. By 2050, they expect it to be 35 million people, and 70% of Texas will grow in that one particular region. It's 2 of the 5 largest cities in the U.S. are in the Texas Triangle. 77% of the Texas economy today is in the Texas Triangle. So if Texas primary growth is going to remain in that district, this area, because of where it sits, is a half-day's truck drive from this facility to Dallas, to San Antonio, and to the Houston market. So you have the potential for a lot of economic growth long term. As those regions develop, you're going to have more and more distribution capability come in to help support that growth within that region. And then 53 of the Fortune 500 companies in the U.S. are located in the Texas Triangle. So there's a lot of major companies that are in the area that there's no reason to anticipate development won't continue to grow. And 80% of the immigration growth, or not just immigration growth, the growth in Texas has occurred in the Triangle since 2010. So there's a lot of long-term prospects there. This facility could take advantage of some of that if we can get it to fruition. So this is really the first stage of that. It benefits Fort Hood in the near term because it allows them to move that truck access point, helps the communities because no longer you have that traffic back up over on I-14. And then it also promotes when we get ready to do the multimodal project, it helps promote the viability of that side as well. So, DAG. DAG is scored. There's a timeline for it, and I should have put the timeline a little further up. What will happen is we will start meeting. We had one meeting early. We'll meet in June on the 6th. Between now and October, we'll have successive meetings. As part of those meetings, one is defining which project the region is going to go for and has the most chances of success. When you submit a project, it's scored, and you'll see the scoring criteria down here along the bottom with explanations of what they are. Some of the scoring is it's black and white. One of the scores right here, if you've previously received a DAG grant, you get 0 points. If you've never received a DAG grant, you get 9 points. There is no in between. Some of that based on the bill that just passed. The governor signed it actually yesterday, which is this comment right here. When I made the slide, it hadn't passed yet, or hadn't been signed yet. Is going to reduce some of the scoring. So we'll see what the new rules are for this fall. But one of the biggest issues is the local cost share. We can max out almost everything. It's the local cost share piece that always becomes the issue for the region. If you look up here in the last scoring criteria, Fort Hood's project came in, that digital surveillance system for the airfield came in as the #1 of 12 projects that were funded. There was only 6 points difference between Fort Hood and the first loser. And I don't mean that in a negative way, it's just that's the first one that didn't get funded. If you look at between the last winner and the first loser, there's less than 1 point difference. So all the TMPC commissioners, 12 of them, each score all the projects that are submitted. those scores are assimilated, and then that's where you get these overall scores from. But you can see this criteria. One of the biggest issues is the local cost share. If you'll notice, there's level 1, 2, and 3, and the local cost share piece right here, if it's less than 32%, I'm sorry, let me look at the slide in front of them. Yeah, 32% or less, you get 0 to 3 points. 33%, you get 4 to 6 points. We were at 35% on the last project, and I'll show you how that was funded in just a second. So that's where, and you think about 3 points, if you're on number 6 or 7, you just fell out of the unfunded category. If you were number 1, you're still going to be okay because you're still going to be in the top 7 based on those last results. But that's just kind of give you an idea. It's not just somebody sits down and picks them. They actually score them. They're rank ordered, and then that's how they're funded based on the availability of funds. This is how we did the last project for the instrumentation package. You'll see the total project cost was 4.8. DAG gave us 3.1. Fort Hood contributed $1 million, and they have contributed $1 million both years that we have done, or both times we have done this. There's some in-kind costs, which is staff work that Fort Hood does or communities do, and you can count that as part of your contribution. And then we had a local cost share of 471, and that gave us the 35% total cost share, which got us into that second level of funding. Because of how I talked about the 0 or 9, if you've received a DAG grant or you have it, we approach different entities about sponsoring these when they come around to maximize our points. This last time, Bell County agreed to sponsor the project and actually paid 25% of the local cost share up front. The previous round, Killeen EDC paid for it all, 400 and something thousand that they just paid for. No one even approached the other communities about it, even though Fort Hood is a regional base. And you see, we also get letters of support from congressmen and senators, and state representatives and senators as well to submit with the packets. So, any questions on, that's just kind of give you an example of how the communities, we approached each one, how each one contributed. You see what Copper's Cove contributed, 36,000, and you'll see what the other communities contributed as well. So this is how we're going to move forward with the DAG piece. The next meeting is on the 6th of June. As I say, they'll either narrow it down or they'll pick a project that we'll go forward with there. If they haven't picked one, then we'll go to the 11 July meeting and they'll have to pick one by then because we have to start writing the grant applications. What'll happen is Fort Hood generally sponsors and writes the grant application with feedback from the communities. Then you'll see what's called 2 evaluation groups. I will select a group of about 6 to 7 people who have nothing to do with this project, and actually I don't care, I don't even want them to have military experience. We give them the packet, and I give them the score sheets that the TNPC commissioners will use, and they grade the projects. So it's kind of we call it a murder board. They're allowed to grade based on what they read in the packet. They're not allowed to, they can't ask questions, just like TNPC commissioners can't ask questions. And then they grade them, we collate scores and give each one a score. They also are allowed to give written feedback though. Hey, I don't understand what this is. Because as you know, the military will use acronyms a lot. Well, if these people can't